goofy at this point.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, that just got recorded. Oh, thank you, Lena.
Rob, what's the delimiter between normal and your best behavior?
We don't have time for that on this call.
Yeah. I'm just curious. I've never noticed the difference.
Really isn't one.
One other switch test here. Let me put on screen sharing session.
Hello, John.
Hello. Did that switch over?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Hi, Natalie.
Hello. And Ryan, thank you for recording this one.
Oh, Kate did it. I can't take credit.
Oh, Kate. Kate,
I'm on top of it, Natalie.
you're great, Kate. Thank you so much. Love it.
Okay. Oh, good point. Let's change that. All right. You guys may not be ready, but I think I might be ready. All right, who's lying? I'm not ready.
It's now or never.
Now or never. What? Darn it. There was that's actually binary. Never is an option. When did we agree to that?
Well, you committed, so it's now or now, I guess.
Yeah, it's now or now.
Oh.
Natalie, are we still good? You wanted me to just go ahead and start?
Yeah, whenever you're ready. It looks like I'm 11 o'clock, or in my time, 11 o'clock right now, so you are good to go, John.
Perfect. Well, Natalie was gracious enough to let me introduce myself. The errors of her ways will become evident shortly. My name is John Mock. I've been with the company for 20 plus years, doing a variety of things. Some of the jobs titles that I've held are quality control tech, little known fact actually, support tech, network administrator, service manager. In general, your friendly neighborhood IT guy. A couple of items on the hit parade that really speak for me is helping to bring internet, computing, and office productivity, sometimes with baling wire and duct tape, in Iraq, the stands, all around Louisiana, up and down our wonderfully, beautifully burnt out husk that is California. But that's not what I'm here to talk to you about today. There are those stories, and if you want those stories, I have a good friend named Paul, and he's a talented storyteller, and he has a couple doozies. As titled, I'll be talking today about automation. First and foremost, let's get everybody to virtually stand up a bit. I'm going to pose a question about what automation, when I say the word automation, what does that mean to you? Hopefully you should see a poll that's coming up. Feel free to type in your response and hit submit. If you leave the box open, you'll begin to see that the responses of other people that are going away. So like I said, stand up, take a breather, exercise, provide some responses. Very good. One small note as we move forward is when you're ready to proceed, you can go ahead and click the X button and the poll will close on itself. If you want to get back to the poll, we are closing this particular poll, but if you want to just get back to take a look at this word cloud, click the polls in your upper right of your teams. So pretty standard. I think the most common answer so far has been computer. Now, I guess anybody who answered computer, do you mean your computer automatically does things, or you're automatically going to be throwing your computer out the window when you hear the term automation? Feel free to speak up, anybody. I knew there was going to be a speak up option. Oh, I like it. Synergy. Very good. Couple more seconds for your responses. Thank you to you 31 brave souls that actually answered. Although I didn't actually have you stand up and present yourself, so I think it's pretty fair. Okay, great. Computers, data harvesting, automatic generation. I threw out the joblessness part, so thank you for that person. A little known fact is we all do things very automatically as humans. We're filled with automation. There's a technical term for that, and it's called automatic information processing. Mechanically, our cells divide on their own. Our heart beats, blood is flowing, lungs are breathing, your stomach is digesting, the plumbing is still plumbing, hopefully. And our brains, all about that. The expression, I think, therefore I am, you can actually put that aside because we do so many things that we don't think about. Reading, speaking, hand gestures. More practically for this presentation, you have reviewing documents, approving items, approving documents, actions, writing an email, all automatic. Well, I mean, the email, you think about what to say, you think about how to phrase it, how to get the response you want. But if I were to take a compose window and scramble it all up, you would still immediately know I want to send a communication to someone. I need to find a blank area that I could put my text into and some way to get that email to send. Hopefully that's automatic for all of us. Everything that I mentioned before is part of a mental cognitive process. And there's key components to that. One, it's first and foremost very fast. It's parallel, it's efficient, and it requires little cognitive effort. And you don't really have to actively control or pay attention to it. For us humans, at least, this type of processing is a result of repetitive training at the same task. Automation. Businesses also have processes, essentially a set of tasks and activities that help a business reach a specific goal. These business workflows often involve multiple emails. People are sending stuff back and forth, a lot of documents, some handoffs, some assignments. And whenever there's a small problem or errors that creep in, they tend to cascade into inefficiencies, communication breakdowns, bottlenecks, and missed deadlines, which are issues that multiply at scale. That means the more often they happen, the worse the effect is. As I'm talking, I'd like you to stop and just mentally think about what are the tasks and processes that you're engaged in today. As you're mentally review that, I'm willing to bet they fall into some certain categories. Data entry, I gotta write an email. Collection of data from other people, responses, organization of files, various other work product. Most important, communications between your teammates, communication between decision makers, communication between stakeholders, and please, I hope, communication with our clients. Heck, you even communicate with yourself. So whenever you put in a reminder, add an appointment, write a note, you're communicating with yourself. And finally, storage. Where do I have these things? And how can I archive them for later? These are all processes that any business, and hopefully our business, has. I think it should go unsaid that when these processes run efficiently, they seem automatic. Software, automation software aims to actually achieve this outcome perfectly. Enter stage left, Microsoft is to the rescue. They have a platform that we have called Microsoft 365 Power Platforms. The three-legged stool on this beast is comprised of Power Automate, slide problem, Power Automate, Power Apps, and Power BI. Now, many of you have probably already seen a presentation that covers Power BI. Power Apps is a module that is a self-contained service that you can make and provide to internal and external stakeholders and clients. But in this presentation, I'll be introducing you to Power Automate. It's formerly known as Flows, if you've probably heard of that before. Power Automate is an online tool that allows you to create original multi-step, sometimes multi-stage workflows that go between apps and services. And it's meant to collect data, get and send emails, notifications, and organize files. Another term you may have heard in this space is RPA. RPA stands for Robotic Process Automation, and it's a technology that utilizes software robots to emulate the actions of human workers, you and me. For instance, it can identify and extract data elements from a document. It can navigate a system. It can navigate a web page. That's not going to be a focus of this presentation, although I will touch upon it. Any questions so far? Okay. Microsoft, being their democratic, although monopolistic selves, has actually included Power Automate as part of our E5 licensing. And so part of my goal today is to show you exactly how Power Automate works and how you can use it yourself. So why don't I go ahead and drop my presentation for a moment. Change my mouse for a little better visibility. Second. All right. And share my screen. Okay, so what I'm hoping to do is take you through the Power Automate application. You can get to it through our cloud service. So that's at cloud.ecc.net. In the upper left, we've got the apps grid. Once you click on that, there'll be all the apps you commonly use. In this case, Power Automate may not be here. If you need to find it, click all apps and it'll be there. This is the Power Automate screen. As soon as you get here, their whole goal is to help you get started with Power Automate. There's some templates. There's, various walkthroughs that you can do. This one's an hour, and I'm hoping you're already spending an hour with me today. So I'm going to save you some time and we can get through this demo a little quickly. Across the left are some action items. Home takes you back to this place. My flows is what we're going to focus on today. You can launch directly into creating a workflow using the create. Like I said, there's a number of templates and data connectors, which we probably won't focus on today. If you click My Flows, you'll notice that there's 4 sections here. Cloud Flows, since this is an online tool, just means your flows. Desktop Flows is actually something that touches a little bit on RPA. I'm not going to be addressing business process flows directly today. And then Shared with Me is where you share flows with other people. This is the collaboration part. You can create your own things to automate, or you can work together with other people, and that's where those flows will be as soon as you share it with someone. Let's go ahead and get started here. If I wanted to create a new flow right now, which we're going to go ahead and do, you can do it from a template. You can do it from a Visio. So that means if you've already mapped something out, it will try to apply action cards to it. There are 4 types of flows that generally start out. An automated flow is something that happens based on some other action. So an event happens, let's kick this off. An instant cloud flow is essentially the same as a button. Boop, click the button and it starts. Scheduled is going to be time-based. Today, every day, every 3rd Friday, only on Easter, on odd years, that kind of thing. So let's do an automatic flow or an instant flow. We'll call this the lead demo. It's a manual trigger. And create.
And John, I think I saw a hand raised. Manjeev, do you have a question?
Yes,
you.
I did. I was wondering if you're supposed to be following along on our laptops or just watching you right now, John.
Let's take the voyeuristic approach. Let's go ahead and watch me. I will be around throughout this process and definitely after to help anybody who wants to get started right away.
Okay. Thank you.
So we've named it. We've got the trigger. So let's immediately jump in. Before we talk about the action cards, let me lay out the demo. For instance, say you've got some data here, and I've already generated this of some people, some emails, and an upcoming meeting we have. So they have an itinerary and whether or not they're going to show up. Bear with me here on that one. Just assume this is true and we somehow collected it and you have it. At some point, you're going to be like, well, is everybody going to show up? And is everybody showing up at the time they're going to say? So great. Let's figure out how to do that. After you trigger the flow by pressing a button, what's the first action you want to do? Well, I want to get that Excel. Before I can do that, though, let me talk through these items here. The first thing is a search bar. Very powerful. As soon as you do this once or twice, you really already know what you want. If you don't, though, there's categories. Built-in items are going to be anything that is included within our subscription and specifically within, just the general operation of any computer, controls, data operations like setting variables, time, date, that kind of thing. Standard included with our subscription. So our license already has this, and this is all the basic stuff that comes with a suite out, interoperating with Excel, Word, any of those items. Premium, these are cool, but that's where you start getting into, we got to maybe pay for it. So I want to see my Excel file. So let's go ahead and pull the rows from our Excel file here. You can start typing, or as I said, you can pick a category and pull up. So once we list a row here, that means I need to go find that Excel. In this case, I happen to save it in SharePoint, OneDrive, so we can pick that. Because I used OneDrive, there actually are 2. There's our version and the consumer version that's associated with your Hotmail or whatnot. So I happen to remember the second one is related to our company account. It pulls up a list of the directories you have. So we're doing a training day. This was the lead demo. So let's pick that Excel. I had actually made a table out of it. So you can pick the table. And there you are. We have now gone and looked at that Excel file. Now, if you notice from the Excel file, there were multiple people. I actually want to get everybody at some point. So how would I get them? Well, I can call them individually, but I can also send them an email. So let's send them an email. I want to send an email. And in this case, I actually would like them to reply to me automatically with some option. So who am I sending this to? One of the best things about Power Automate is some of the concepts of programming, such as variables and that kind of thing, you don't really have to deal with because they are assigning them as dynamic content. Because I asked you to look at that Excel, it's read the Excel and kind of divvied up everything that's in a data item. So click on dynamic content, and I want to get the email. It did automatically see that there was more than one email, so it put it into a loop for me. So let's send an email and change the subject. Confirming arrival status. And I want to give them a choice of yes or no. They may very well have other choices in mind, but this is what you're stuck with today. Yes or no. And then fill in some body to give some context to this. So please confirm your itinerary and arrival status. It is HTML, so sometimes you have to add a little HTML. The itinerary, I assume that there was a file associated that they'd forward me that what was their itinerary, and there was a link to that. So let's go ahead and throw that in there so they can be reminded of that. And then there's no need being rude. So add a salutation. There you go. An email would be sent. I certainly hope, since they're my friends, that they're going to respond. And in the event they do, we actually need to figure out what to do with that response. And that's called a condition. So let's go ahead and pull up the conditional control. And, normally you'd be like, well, if they said yes, how do I get that? Well, you don't have to worry about that. Since we sent them an email that had choices built in, we can just see what they selected. We want to do a test real quick to see whether they said yes or no. In this particular case, you could have said either yes or no as this condition. But in the event they said yes, then we're going to populate the yes branch of this. And what we want to do is basically fill in how they responded. So let's update the Excel row of my document. Training, meeting, table, and then key column. In this case, I want to pick a column to which I'm comparing, and I have to think about what data is available. When they respond to me, I only have a few things that are available, but thankfully, one of them happens to be their email. So there's 3 of them. When the person that responds for a particular row, I can match that against who the respondent was. I don't have to fill out any of these other fields, but I do want to know that they confirmed yes. And we can even edit these. Update yes. Now, to make this really usable, I don't want to spend all day going back to this file to know when things are done. I can send myself a notification, and that'll tell me the person who responded confirmed yes. Now, in this case, just for the sake of completeness, let me do the other side of this equation real quick. Life is highly variable, and so sometimes plans change. Pick the table, match up who's responding. No. Now, in theory, in this node chain, however I collected the data originally might be a place where I could put this to provide them back to give me details about what actually changed. In this case, let's just quickly wrap this up and let myself know that has changed plans. Okay. you have questions as I'm moving, don't forget, you can definitely ask right away. So let's review our steps really quickly. We looked at the file, we sent an email, and we dealt with the responses. Let's go ahead and save this. Always important when you're working. Hopefully that's automatic as well. And then let's review. One of my lessons learned, which I definitely want to pass to you, is there's a details section, and you want to put in details about what this flow does. You may only have a few flows. I can tell you from experience that if you don't fill this out and fill this out relatively, completely, guess what? You definitely know what you were doing when you wrote it. Will you know tomorrow? Will you know next week? Will you know 3 months, 6 months from now? So, some other items on this page. You can turn on and off a flow. You can submit it as a template. Please don't do that. You can run it. You can save a copy of it to save time later. There's details. There's the status, when you created it, what type it is. There's a run history. So every time this happens, it will record the automation that's happening. These are the data connectors that I talked about, and there are other data connectors. And this is the owner, that's me. You can add co-owners. So if you're collaborating on an automation with someone else, you add that person and they are able to work with the flow as well. There's also a category called run only owners in instant flows. So now that we've already done this, let's go ahead and run it. Live demo, confirming the connectors. We're going to run the flow. And I will get my email here. Okay. So what I see in my email is, as I was one of the people that was on the list, is that I got an email saying, hey, please confirm your arrival status. If I wanted to, I could paste this link in. I probably should have worked a little bit better on formatting because that didn't go so well. If all's well, I would say yes. And that's done. So we can go ahead and move this off screen. I'll open up my product and instantly, since this is all cloud-based and SharePoint, my response has been recorded. This actually went to my colleagues as well. I don't know if they're going to respond also, but the entire process between when the flow started, when the actions were executed, and seeing a response was seconds. Pretty fast. Oh, thanks, Ryan. All right, so there we have it. Your first automation flow. Any questions? While we're doing that, I'm going to switch back to the presentation. And change my mouse. The yellow is a little annoying.
Yeah, I got one. Hey, John, is there a limit to the number of responses or anything you can get there?
There are limits. We haven't reached them. How about that? But there are limits, and it's based on the type of flow that you set up. They say 5,000 a day, but there are varying limits based on how you set up your flow. And there's actually ways that you can exceed that by adding certain type of stages to your flow so that you're stacking the limits on top of each other. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you. You created your first flow. And believe me, I know. The first thing you said was, well, gosh, that I'm maybe 10 minutes light on my life now. I could have done that in a couple of seconds. That's the automation I'm talking about. But if you extrapolate this out to not just 3 emails that you would have sent, not 3 responses that you would have had to deal with, but to a larger scale, it does make a difference. As an example, when we got started, we had a project called Camp Lejeune. Some of you are familiar with this. On Camp Lejeune, our client had a requirement for daily submittals of safety, production, and quality reports. That was across 41 projects. It wasn't 41 to begin with, but needless to say, it was a massive program. We developed a number of flows under that program. This is a list of them. So as aforementioned, safety, production, and quality reports, there was an approval flow for that. There was a revolving doorway of new employees that were coming in. And we weren't tracking just our employees. We were tracking the employees for safety purposes on all our subs as well. So there wasn't any way to pre-register them. They would show up one day, their information was collected, it would come through an automation, and that had to be turned back into the app so it'd be available the next day. Our quality control department had deficiency lists to track, called it rework. So every daily report had to be mined for any potential deficiencies. And then those deficiencies were added to a list, and the list had to be uploaded to the app in order to have it available for correction in subsequent reports. So QC and employee API uploads were very critical. There was a mountain of filing. I can't imagine how many quote unquote filing clerks we would have needed if there wasn't automation flows to file paperwork as you went. We also had a safety daily report assignment dispatch. Now this one's interesting. What this one did was, our managers would know where we're working the next day, and we were able to dispatch the report assignment to their device. And that happened to probably, up to 30 people at one point. So, hey, go here. This is the area you're safetying or quality checking, and fill out the report for that day. I'm not going to go much more in depth into any of these other automations. However, I do want to dig into one of them. So let's go ahead and dissect the daily report review flow. We made an actual flow diagram to see what steps were needed in order to get that done. It's complicated. If it looks clunky, small, and hard to read, that's because there was a lot of steps involved. The inputs weren't complicated, thankfully. There was an email and there was a PDF attachment, but using that as the trigger, as soon as the email arrived, the automation would read the email, pull out relevant information such as the project, the date, and based on that information, we were able to immediately figure out who was supposed to be an approver on that particular program. As I mentioned earlier, there's 41 total projects, and there weren't to begin with. So as they added on, we wrote the flow so that no additional changes would need to be made. So add a project, no problem. Flow knows about it and we'll take care of it. Change the personnel, no problem. The flow will know about it and take care of it. Same for safety and quality. There was the safety and quality managers. They would each get an approval request based on their daily report. People got sick, people rotated in and out, no problem. It was dynamically assigned locally to figure out who's on duty that day, and the flow automatically picked those from the basic information of understanding what project it was and who was on call at the time. We updated so we saved the attachment, we updated the metadata, and the metadata was used in order to sort all the reports that were happening. So you wanted to sort out by just, Joe Schmo, the submitter, or you wanted to sort out all the reports based on a specific project. The metadata allowed us to sort that information from within SharePoint. Otherwise, you'd have just massive amounts of folders of data where we don't know what date it is. Perhaps I only wanted reports from 2 months ago for these 3 projects. You could filter for that using the metadata. In terms of the approval process, you just did that. You used a send to email, or we used a send to email, but there was an actual start and wait for an approval. That was unique in the fact that when you waited, there was a timeout process. there is a temporal displacement between when reports are submitted, when they need to be approved, and when the requirement for when the submittal is. So it was time sensitive. There was a timeout process. If after submission this issue wasn't dealt with, then it was escalated to the backup approver. If the backup approver somehow had an issue, didn't get it, technical problems, it was escalated to the program manager. And so we were able to efficiently keep the process or keep ourselves compliant with the client requirements. As you notice, if it was rejected, that's a small red line here, then it went back. Start all over. Please go fix your report and resubmit it. Start down this again. In the event that it was approved, then first and foremost, the automation immediately filed the report in the appropriate location. So it knew this is for XYZ project, put in the XYZ project folder. It knew this was a safety report, so put in XYZ safety report folder. Our submittal coordinator was also notified. And I think this, you'll notice here that this was a separate section. She actually reviewed, took all the various types of reports, consolidated them, merged them into one file, and then had to know, who was the appropriate client to send that to. In a great example of kind of monitoring and observation, we ended up, based on the direction of the project, automating that step as well later in a later revision. If you'll let me, I'm going to go ahead and toot my own horn. I talked earlier about how things on automatic processes could require less cognitive thought. Well, these numbers here represent the fact that we matriculated over 66,000 daily reports of various kinds. It comes out to about 70 a day. I've actually looked at the actual flows themselves. Many of them took mere seconds. But some of them ran between 1 and 5 minutes, and that's actual processing time. So between reporting and someone, getting to their approvals for the day, there could be hours and stretches, but ultimately it didn't take more than the timeout, which was 24 hours at the time. And, this last number is an estimate, but I'd say just not having to find the report, because you get to look at the report immediately by clicking a link. And then after you review it, you can say approved or not approved right away from your email. Save probably 5 minutes a day per person. From my perspective, I actually had to go find someone to figure out these numbers. That's how automatic it was, and I didn't think about it. Once they started processing, they went off on their own. We didn't limit this to just the projects. I've taken automation to other programs that are either in process or completed. Our mentorship program has an onboarding process where applicants fill out an application, and historically someone had to approve that and then add them to various groups and permissions. Now we're looking to finalize a flow that does that, sends out the request to review and approve. And then once that's done, ascertain the details about the applicant and then assign them to the appropriate distribution lists, the appropriate team, and the appropriate groups. There's also course material, and those are staged in and provided permissions as needed. IT has been using it. We've used it in multiple areas. We did it for the security upgrade. We did it for our equipment distribution. We've automated pulling information from our endpoint management on a timely basis. I've helped marketing with capturing new opportunities. They use a site called GovWin. Sometimes during the process of that, there can be a number of files. And while this hasn't been, exhaustively used, someone would have to go grab those files. This is an example of RPA where the flow itself imitates you. It goes to the site, goes to the opportunity that you're interested in, and then depending on how many files it is, it starts downloading them, individually. I think at one point we've executed that and downloaded 300 plus files. The automation itself took 4 hours. You can imagine how much that saved in manual labor, though. We're looking to do a very similar thing for the CPARS information download. And, even simple project notifications. One of our QC colleagues wanted to know when his particular projects were won and starting and when the team was created. So there's a notification for that. So hopefully I've shown you how to create a flow, and I've talked about some processes that we've used it from. Everybody got it? Great. So now I'm going to be sending out a 42 question quiz. The minimum score for the quiz is 92%. Any failures will be met with caning and immediate termination. I'm kidding. There's no quiz. But there will be a survey that comes out after this presentation. And I would be very appreciative if you filled out the survey. And within the survey, you'll be able to add, hopefully as you digested this, tasks and processes that in your team or in your department that might benefit from automation. If you're already thinking about now, don't wait. We have a chat box, fill it in. I'll pull the chat log later. Think of the poll or the survey later as a handy virtual note-taking device and an ability for me to reach out and cold call you later. Finally, as I wrap up, I'd like to talk about the benefits of automation. Most prevalently, there's reduced operational cost. I mean, the cost is also in time. If you automate some of your redundant tasks or manual tasks, you'll save time. There's also actual costs savings. So given that this is part of our E5 licensing, there's no additional cost. We already own it because we own everything else. So reduction in operational costs, improved productivity. I certainly hope with all the time we saved, I'm not going to speak to what you're going to use that time for, but you can use it to hopefully move our mission forward. Ensuring high availability. As people, we have, work days, we have off days, we have sick days, PTO days, appointments, dentists, kids, family, etc. There will come a day when the machines rise, and I'm worried because I'll be one of the first ones they get because of all the days that I berate my Alexa. But until that day, whenever you set an automation, it will run when it's triggered or when it's meant to run. I'm hoping we can build a better, more agile organization. When properly implemented, the management of our business processes actually increases flexibility. Having everybody on the same page about how a process works, because we had to discover, define it, model it, and then execute an automation for it, means that all we have to do later when we need to course correct is add a step, let everybody know, and we can move forward with it. Ensuring compliance. Not here today, but I'm hoping somewhere Glenn's ears are perking up. And obviously, my boss Ryan is also probably listening to this. As much as we write SOPs or mandate policy from on high down, we're humans, and it comes down to best effort. But if you write in any compliance requirements you have into the steps of your automation, then you'll be compliant. They will do that exactly every time. As I said, at least until the machines rise and kill us all. And supremely, the main benefit of automation and business process management is going to be to optimize our performance. Like I said, the clarity that we receive from discovering our processes, or in some cases, rediscovering our processes, will make us better. In closing, I sincerely hope that your takeaway from this presentation is that you will look into your processes, talk to your team, and look to implement some automation. And that you will see me, and I think I speak for my colleagues in IT, that we can be your guides and companions in this. And if all else fails, I still have duct tape. So thank you.
Thank you so much, John. And besides the duct tape, I have a question.
Sure.
And I know that this is going to be beneficial for probably each and every department, and also individuals as well who have systems that can be definitely automated. What is you touched on this a little bit, but what is your process of working with, people or departments? Because I know I certainly needed your guidance going back and doing the mentorship program together. How would you suggest people reach out and work with you?
I use a complicated matrix of preferential treatment. So if you bring beer, no, I'm joking. Currently, right now, I'm just presenting this, so I have a number of items that I'm trying to work with everybody on. But I think I will definitely need to put together a matrix for how to prioritize new items. And I think it's important that we try to have, that's why I'm asking for a survey after this presentation, to kind of grasp where people who may not have seen this before or who already know about this see automation fitting into their programs, and holistically holistically look at all of those, look to batch some of them, and work with you on how to get those executed. It can be reached via email, cell phone. Some people actually have my cell phone on speed dial, Teams, and sometimes in the office.
Thank you, John. I will have to say, I know you and I worked through this process, and whoever anybody else who is listening, it is a wonderful tool. Really highly recommend it. Please take advantage of it because it will save you definitely time and energy. Does anybody else have any other questions for John?
Sorry, you guys are over here on my screen if I look over here.
Going once, going twice.
Okay.
All right,
If
John.
there's no more questions, one last thing I want to add on here is that this automation covered one aspect of the Power Platform. I'll hopefully next year be hosting the second half of that, which covers Power Apps and our data infrastructure changes that we're going to be working on. So look forward to that, and I hope to see you there.
Thank you so much, John. This has been very, very informative.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.